The first time Lucas heard the voices, he thought it was the wind whispering through the cemetery trees. It was a rainy October afternoon, and he was digging a new grave in the oldest section of the municipal cemetery. The sound came faintly, almost imperceptible, like a distant murmur that mixed with the noise of rain beating against dry leaves. At 23, Lucas had been working as a gravedigger for only 6 months, inheriting a job his grandfather had held for decades. The solitary work didn't bother him. In fact, he preferred the silent company of the dead to the agitation of the living world. St. Benedict Cemetery, with its irregular stone paths and century-old mausoleums, offered a peace he had never found elsewhere. But that afternoon, the peace was broken by something he couldn't explain. While leveling the earth over the tomb of Dona Esperanza Ferreira, who had died at 82, Lucas stopped working. The whisper returned, clearer this time, coming directly from beneath his feet. They weren't words he could distinguish, just a human sound, desperate, as if someone were trying to scream through layers of earth and wood. Lucas stepped away from the tomb, his heart beating faster. He looked around, searching for some rational explanation. Perhaps it was water seeping into the coffin or gases forming during decomposition. His grandfather always said that cemeteries made strange noises, especially at night or on humid days like that one. During the following weeks, the voices became more frequent and clearer. They didn't come only from Dona Esperanza's tomb, but from several others scattered throughout the cemetery. Lucas began to recognize patterns. The voices were more audible right after burials, when the earth was still fresh, and always during moments when he worked alone. One November morning, while cleaning accumulated leaves from the tombs in the Faux North Wing, Lucas distinctly heard words. The voice came from Roberto Santana's tomb, a merchant who had died in a car accident 3 weeks earlier. The voice was hoarse, desperate, repeating the same phrase. "She killed me. She killed me. It wasn't an accident." Lucas stood paralyzed, the broom trembling in his hands. He looked around nervously, making sure he was alone. The voice continued, more urgent now. "My wife. She cut the brakes. Look in the garage. The tools are still there." The young gravedigger ran from the cemetery that day, arriving home pale and shaking. He spent the night awake, trying to convince himself he was having a nervous breakdown. Perhaps the solitary work was affecting his mind, creating auditory hallucinations. He decided to seek medical help, but before he could schedule an appointment, the news confirmed what the voice had said. Police had discovered evidence of sabotage in Roberto Santana's car. His wife, Elena, was arrested 3 days later, charged with homicide. During interrogation, she confessed to cutting the vehicle's brakes, driven by the desire to collect her husband's life insurance and free herself from a marriage she considered a burden. Lucas followed the news with a mixture of terror and fascination. How was it possible that he knew those details before the police did? The coincidence was impossible to ignore, but accepting the alternative meant admitting that the dead really spoke to him. In the following days, other voices manifested. The tomb of Maria dos Dores, an elderly woman who had supposedly died of natural causes, whispered about the grandson who had gradually increased the dosage of her heart medication. The tomb of young Andre Costa, victim of an alleged suicide, screamed that he had been pushed from the bridge by schoolmates who had hidden the crime for 2 years. Each revelation was subsequently confirmed by police investigations or spontaneous confessions. Lucas realized he wasn't going insane. He had become a channel between the worlds of the living and the dead, an intermediary for voices crying out for justice. At first, he felt chosen, special. He began meticulously recording every whisper, every posthumous confession, creating a secret file of crimes that authorities hadn't yet discovered. He anonymously reported the most serious cases, always careful not to reveal how he obtained the information. But the feeling of being an instrument of divine justice didn't last long. On a cold December night, while working under flashlight over the freshly opened tomb of João Mendes, a local politician who had died of a heart attack, Lucas heard something that froze him. The voice didn't come from beneath the earth like the others. It came from behind him, clear and threatening. "You will be the next one buried. Lucas turned quickly, the flashlight trembling in his hand, but no one was there. The cemetery was wrapped in its usual darkness, only the shadows of trees swaying gently in the wind. But the voice continued, now coming from different directions, as if multiple mouths were speaking it. "You've heard too much. You know too much. Your time is up." It was then that Lucas understood the terrible truth. It wasn't just the victims who spoke to him. There were other presences in the cemetery, entities that didn't want secrets to be revealed. The murderers, who died without paying for their crimes. The accomplices who took guilt to the grave. The powerful who bought silence with their own death. During the following weeks, Lucas tried to avoid the cemetery outside his work hours, but the voices followed him. He heard whispers in his house, threats coming from the walls, promises of revenge echoing through empty hallways. He discovered that some of the dead didn't want justice. They wanted to perpetuate injustice, to keep their crimes hidden, even beyond death. The investigation into João Mendes revealed a corruption network involving politicians, businessmen, and police officers. The man had died on the eve of signing a plea bargain agreement that would destroy dozens of careers and send many important people to prison. His sudden death, initially attributed to stress, began to seem too suspicious to be coincidence. Lucas realized he was at the center of a war between the dead. On one side, victims crying out for justice. On the other, the guilty trying to keep their secrets buried. And he was the only one who could hear both sides, the only one capable of giving voice to the silenced or preserving the silence of the guilty. The pressure intensified when Lucas began receiving threats not only from the dead, but also from the living. Strange cars appeared on his street. Men in suits watched him from afar during work, and his phone rang in the middle of the night with only heavy breathing on the other end of the line. One night, arriving home after a particularly difficult day at the cemetery, Lucas found his door broken down. Nothing had been stolen, but a message was written on the bathroom mirror with something that looked like blood. "Stop or join them." It was then that he fully understood his situation. The voices of the dead hadn't chosen him randomly. He was descended from a lineage of gravediggers who, for generations, had served as guardians of the cemetery's secrets. His grandfather had never told him about the family's gift, perhaps hoping it would skip a generation. But now Lucas understood why his grandfather had always seemed to know more about the dead than he should, why certain tombs were cared for with special attention, why some families had always treated the family's gravediggers with a mixture of respect and fear. St. Benedict Cemetery wasn't just a place of eternal rest. It was a living archive of an entire city's crimes and secrets. And Lucas had become its unwilling guardian, responsible for deciding which voices deserved to be heard and which should remain silenced forever. As he walked among the tombs in the early morning hours, listening to the chorus of whispers he now knew would never cease, Lucas made his decision. He wouldn't flee from his destiny, but neither would he be manipulated by the living or the dead. He would find a way to balance the scales, to give voice to justice without becoming a victim of revenge. The voices continued whispering in the darkness, and Lucas finally responded, his own voice echoing among the headstones. "I hear you all of you, but I'm the one who decides which secrets come to light." The silence that followed was more deafening than any scream. Darkness hides in the details. If you made it this far, the story must have pulled you in. Leave a like, drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Alma Oculta and ring the bell. That way, you won't miss the next dive into terror and mystery. Until next time, if the night allows it.